Hello, scumbags. I'm Andrew Fantasia. Welcome back to High Ground. We are neck deep in the summer of Legends here on High Ground. We're having so much fun talking about Legends books, Legends characters, Legends vehicles. It is a legendary cornucopia, and I am so thrilled to have you all here to talk about it. Today, we are getting intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. Why are we wasting time? Let's dive in. Here's a question for you. Every time you read or watch, let me give this my best George McFly here. Stories, science fiction stories about visitors coming down to Earth from other planets. Do you ever wonder what those other planets are like? Well, if you're anything like me, the answer is a hell yeah. One of my favorite aspects of experiencing new Star Wars stories is getting to see and feel and touch and yes, smell all the new planets. I love adding new and exciting worlds to the giant database of galactic locations that I may or may not have a huge Evernote file about, possibly. What are the planets and moons that set the stage for countless Legends tales? We're diving into that today. Let's take a peek at the essential guide to planets and moons and its very sexy new counterpart. All right, welcome to the Essential Guide to Planets and Moons. Now, this one's by Daniel Wallace, and the illustrations are by Brandon McKinney and Scott Collins. I hope I'm saying that right. There are, I think, 100 planets in here. Now, I would say maybe half of them are canon. A quarter of them have been made canon thanks to that giant map that came out in the Force Awakens beginner game. And then another quarter of them are just not canon at all. So we'll flip through this here and I'll show you kind of which ones are which. I mean, you can kind of figure out the canon ones. But as you can see, it's looking a lot on the inside like the characters. It's got the same kind of bar here. But I'm really kind of into the art in this one. Again, even though it's all black and white, there's something just kind of neat about the black and whiteness of this art. It feels just like, I don't know, maybe I'm nostalgic for it. It feels like those old school source books, which is exactly what it is. You'll see what I mean when we get there. And there we go. Here is the first planet, Abregado Ray. And now whenever we get to a planet that is no longer canon, I will let you know. So let's see here. We got Agamar. All right, very cool. And I like what they've done here. You know, you got a cross section of the planet. You see some areas of it. You learn some facts. You see wildlife and people. Sweet, perfect. Like, what more could you ask for? There's Alderaan, which you can still visit. Oh, no, wait. Sorry, I lied. Okay, Almania. There is our first planet that is no longer canon. And if you see this guy here, if you remember him, Queller, this big guy here, he was in the Guide to Characters, but he was in the new Guide to Characters, not the old one. And this is the old Guide to Planets, which is very interesting. But if I flip back to the front here, this came out in 1998. So this was right before Phantom Menace. So it's a little bit more recent than the other old guides. All right, we got our Alzox here where the Tals come from. Very nice. Ambria. All right, Amud. Here's another non-canon planet. You can't find this planet anymore. And there's pterodactyls on it. So that's a shame because we could be visiting pterodactyl planets right now. Anoth, another no longer canon place. And this one's like a funky asteroid surrounded by lightning. They got really creative. And again, for the most part, this would be the first time ever you are seeing these planets depicted visually. Most of them are just coming from novels, right? So the person who drew this had to be like, well, the novel describes it as such and such, and it describes the monsters as such and such, so I'm just going to draw how I think they look. And what a cool job that is, to be able to design Star Wars creatures and areas and people for the first time, just based off a description or just from scratch. Some frog people. I like those frog people. I want to know more about them. They kind of look like the, what are they called? Those guys from the Ninja Turtles. They're not the turtles. They were the power frogs or something. You know what I mean. They're from the animated series. Somebody remind me what they're called. Arcania. I'd imagine it's very arcane there. At Zeri. This is definitely in canon. I remember it being mentioned. Bakura from the Truce of Bakura. Very famous planet. Balmora. That's a nasty looking thing. All right, Barab 1. Here's another planet that is not canon anymore. It's got some cool lizard people, and it's got whatever this thing is. Speaking of terrifying, this is 10 times worse than what we just saw. Here's Bespin. There's an Ugnaught. I always thought this was cool. I remember reading this in this book and being like, oh, I wish we saw this in the movie. But Bespin has these creatures. First of all, there's giant gas bags, which are kind of like sky jellyfish. And then there's these things called Velkers, which are really nasty looking things that fly around and they have razor sharp wings. That's awesome. Where was that in Bespin? We got to visit Bespin again. Bestine, which is where Jack Porkins comes from. There's a full body shot of Porkins. And yes, he has been eating more. Bill Bringy is really cool. This is actually on the cover. You can see it here in color. And it's an asteroid, but it's covered in all kinds of strange towers and stuff. And this is where Thrawn died in the books. He died at the Battle of Bill Bringy. The more you know. Emisari is canon. Bonadan is, I believe, canon. Borlaeus has lizards. There we go. Bothawai, I think that's how you say it, where the Bothans come from. We finally saw that in the Clone Wars. Bis, this is canon again, but we haven't seen it in canon. It's only canon because of that Force Awakens thing I told you about. And here's another image of Emperor Palpatine's clone. So Bis is where Palpatine was growing his clones. It's very close to the core. I think it's as close to the center of the galaxy as you can get. And it's a dangerous place. You don't want to be caught on Bis. Karita, where the Empire has training academies. And this horrific thing. Keratos, another planet that is no longer canon. I'm assuming they grow carrots there. Chandrilla, that's where Mon Mothma's from. Corellia, that's where Kira's from. Very cool stuff about Coruscant. I love reading about Coruscant. It's one of my favorite planets. There's Prince Xizor. Dagobah. This is cool. This was my first time seeing this thing. This is what dragged R2-D2 underneath the swamp. It was this right here. Isn't that neat? Dagobah's full of scary shit, man. Dantooine. They're on Dantooine. I like to think that when the Imperials went to check out Dantooine, instead of finding a rebel base, they found these like ogre people who clubbed them. Dasucha 5, not canon anymore. And this picture always stuck in my head. This always disturbed me. It's some kind of creature that's like part organic and part machine. Man, is that ever weird. But this picture from this book was imprinted in my brain ever since I first read it because of how odd it is. Dathomir, where the Night Sisters come from. Delalt, not canon anymore, but check this out. That looks kind of like the Thala Sirens from Octo. Maybe this lady's gonna milk it. Drawl, where we see some badger people. None of this is canon anymore at all, including the planet. You're gonna see a lot of aliens in this book that look like badgers and woodland creatures. Half the time this book looks less like Star Wars and more like The Wind in the Willows. Duro. Everybody loves Duro. Everybody also loves Endor. There's the Gorax. There's the Teak. And there's Ewoks, I guess, if you're into that. Ariadu, that's where Tarkin's from. Eddie 4, not canon anymore. But I love this dude. I thought he had the coolest name. He's a big criminal guy. His name is Pluvo 2-for-1. Awesome. Ferrari, also not canon anymore. But that's cute. Fondor, where they have a lot of shipyards. Galantos, another non-canon planet. That's cool. I like that thing. There's the planet of the Comorians. And man, that planet must stink. Garros 4, I don't know much about that. Hapes, the Hapen Consortium. They are their own little thing. They're independent from the Republic. Honager, that is where the Nograi come from. Rook. Rook's from Honager. There's everybody's favorite popsicle repository. Home of the Athorians. Here's another non-canon place. I think this is pronounced Chitapatan. So we can all probably guess why it's not canon anymore. Kalarba, which I always liked because it almost sounds like Calabria. I just imagine a planet full of my Italian uncles. Kashyyyk, the Wookiee world. Kessel. Now this was cool because we saw Kessel in the Jedi Academy books. I think that's the first time they set a story in Kessel. And Han Solo and Chewbacca were in the spice mines at Kessel, and there were all these weird creatures. There were these giant spider things, which were horrific. But then there were these things that the miners called bogies, and they were just these mysterious lights that kind of bounced around the spice mines, and they moved really fast, so you couldn't catch one. And I was always fascinated. I'm like, what's the deal with these bogies? What are they? That's kind of cool and frightening. Are they ghosts? Are they like orbs? What's going on? We never found out what the bogies are. And maybe that's for the best. There's some things we're just not meant to know. Calm. Okay. I hope everybody there is calm. Korriban. There we go. Korriban changed its name. So the name is not canon anymore, but the planet is. There's Frieden Nad. He's an old Sith. And there's another Sith. Sith do not look like happy dudes. And this thing, I think you fight some of these in Knights of the Old Republic. There's a planet called Kotlis. Here's Kuat, where they make a lot of ships. Here's Hlwek, where I think this is where the Cyrook come from. Yeah, those are the Cyrook. They look like velociraptors. I don't know much about Mahali, but I love the design of this little dude. That's a cool Star Wars creature. Mimbin, the mud planet from Solo. And that's apparently what the Mimbin folk look like. They look like Rhodians who joined a 1980s glam rock band. Mon Calamari. Speaks for itself. I'm going to take a stab in the dark and guess that that's pronounced Mrlst. Munto Kadru, another non-canon planet. I wish it was, though. because look at that. The people have 4 arms and they can transform into wolves. These are not 2 separate entities. That is a young werewolf that metamorphosizes into the adult Khadro G. I'm assuming that's his name. That's awesome. There's a werewolf planet where people have 4 arms. Yes, please. Merkur, this is where Talon Card has his base, and there's Mara Jade. Midas 7, I don't know much about Midas 7. I can't help you there. Nalhutta and Nar Shaddaa. So there we go. These are 2 very famous city planets. The Smuggler's Moon of Nar Shaddaa, you can see that in the comics. Namchorios is canon. I can't remember where. They have creatures that are cousins to the Tauntauns. Nimdrovis, not canon anymore. I'm kind of glad because these things look more like Doctor Who monsters than Star Wars monsters. Niklon, don't know much about Niklon. N'Zoth, that's that dude from the characters book again who was holding an eyeball. We got Onderon in Clone Wars. You can see it there. You can also see Ord Mantell in Clone Wars, I think. Or no, in the Darth Maul comic, excuse me. Darth Maul goes to Ord Mantell in his comic. Correct me if I'm wrong. But we still haven't seen the story of Han Solo running into a bounty hunter on Ord Mantell. I don't think that happened in the comics, and once we reach Empire, it's already happened because he brings it up. So where's that? Where's that story? I want to know what happened with that bounty hunter. Ossus, Piter, not canon anymore. Pazab, that's just fun to say. Pazab, not canon anymore either, but Comorians live there. Rat of 5, also not canon anymore. Oh my god, it has a pyramid. I just noticed that. It's automatically my new favorite planet. Raltier is canon. Rhodia is very canon. Rune has a native mudman. That's cool. Ryloth, Sakura, incredibly not canon. And again, there's another strange badger person. And as I flip the page, you will see even more, a whole family of strange badger people. This planet, Salonia, is canon now, but I don't know what their deal is. I've never seen a badger person yet, so I don't know when that's going to pop up. Sullust, Tanab, someone must have told someone about Lando's little maneuver at the Battle of Tanab. Talisi, not canon. Talus and Tralis, not canon anymore. Very strange thing. I don't know what the deal is there. That's somewhere in Corellia. Tatooine, I think that kind of speaks for itself at this point. Telti, now this was really cool. This was a planet where they were just making droids or something. It was all droid factories. It's canon now, but just from that role-playing source book. And I love this color image of Telti on this cover. It's just all these multicolored domes, because the air on the planet isn't actually breathable. So they have domes everywhere, and all the cities and factories are all underneath those domes. Telti is really cool. I want to explore that more. It's probably my favorite planet in this book. Teir, okay, kind of boring planet, okay. Typhera, there's ant people. Do not mess with the ant people. They can lift much heavier loads than it looks like they can. Tinna, more badger folk. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. The artists loved their badger folk. Umgul. Umgul is from the Jedi Academy trilogy, and they had a sport there. You can see here, these are blobs. They had Umgulian blob races. You go, you watch the blobs race around a racetrack, you bet on which blob you think is going to win. The blobs are all different shapes and colors. That just sounds really fun. I want to watch an Umgulian blob race. Somebody bring that back. The Vergesso asteroids, not canon anymore, but apparently Dianogas come from there. Vortex, there's a planet of these strange ethereal winged creatures. Akbar crashed into their citadel because he was drunk or something, and he was really ashamed of what he did. Wayland, weird name for a planet. Yavin 4, obviously. Very canon, but I'll tell you what's very not canon. Yavin 8. Yeah, that's right. We never knew anything about Yavin 8. It's gone now, but look, it's got giant snakes and mer people. Why does this not exist anymore? Hashtag bring back Yavin 8. Elysia, which has some huts. I think that's still canon. Zar definitely is not canon anymore, but it's got those things and it's got Trandoshans. And that is the old school essential guide to planets and moons. Now, here's the interesting thing about the new guide to this, because there are actually 3 generations of essential guides. There's the old generation, which is this one, that's generation 1. Generation 2 was the ones that were called the new essential guides, like this one. But Generation 2 didn't have a guide to planets and moons. We had to wait till Generation 3, and look what that looks like. This is the Essential Atlas. It was written by Daniel Wallace and Jason Fry and illustrated by Ian Fullwood, Modi, Chris Rafe, and my boy Chris Trevis. And it is hot, ladies and gentlemen. This is a sexy book. First of all, it's a little bit bigger. You'll notice here that if I kind of try to line those up, it is clearly a bigger book than the old Essential Guides because there's more to say, I guess. There is a lot of stuff in here. It's not just here's some planets and people who live on it. They go above and beyond. Now, this came out in 2009, so it's after all the movies have been out. Most of the stuff in here is canon now. The old book had 23 planets that were not canon anymore. This book has only 3 planets that are not canon anymore. 3 Legends planets. This barely qualifies for the Summer of Legends, but that's okay. We are going to dive right into it. Here we go. I'm so in love with this book. It's beautiful. Look at this. Now, this book contains, among many other things, what I consider to be the best Star Wars map ever drawn by human hands. And we'll get there when we get there. It's funny, recently there has been a map that came out in like a small source book, and people have been covering it in news outlets, and I'm like, why is everybody making a big deal about this new map that came out in 2020? It is so small compared to all the other maps that have come out. I don't get it. So you got an introduction, tells you about the galaxy and the stars and the planets and all that stuff, and it gets very sciencey at this point. It's like, hey, here's what a red dwarf star looks like, and all the specs of that. It really gets into types of stars, and then you've got your main title page. That was just sort of a teaser, a prologue. And now you have part 1, the political galaxy. So it separates the galaxy into spaces, into sections and provinces and whatnot, based on the politics of those provinces. Why is this one separate from that one, etc.? And it tells you, and it gives you a history lesson all the way back from the ancient days of the ancient republic to modern days. And there's all these great drawings, which these look like Chris Travis drawings, and there's so much stuff. And here we go. This is the, in my opinion, definitive galaxy map of the Star Wars universe. Now, of course, this is a Legends map. This is the Summer of Legends. But the basic outline has stayed the same throughout canon. The basic regions of the galaxy, of which there are several, have all stayed the same. So have the major trade routes, which you can see here, which are these long white lines here. Everything is pretty much the same except some of the planets that aren't canon anymore. Makes perfect sense. And you'll see here we have a grid that's easy to find what you're looking for. Remember this map because we're going to come back to it later in the Summer of Legends. They do something very cool with this map. And it just goes on and gives you all kinds of details. Like there's so much in this book. And then it starts telling you about the sections of the galaxy, the regions, starting with the deep core. And then it gives you an up-close, zoomed-in of the deep core. So in the galaxy, you can see here, it's hard to make out, but see these colored shades of blue? Each one of those is a different region, and the deep core is that circle right there in the center. Well, that circle's been expanded upon, magnified, it even shows you here. And then there's all the planets in the deep core. I love this. This is how you do maps of the galaxy. New canon, I love you, but you have not done anything close to being this good when it comes to maps. When we did our episode of Good Will Hunting and I talked about the regions of the galaxy, I used these images because they're just so much better than anything canon had. And then we move away from the deep core to just the core, period. And you can see here, again, an expanded close-up view of that part of the map. The deep core is now grayed out, and the core, which surrounds it, is now highlighted, and you see all the planets in the core, including Coruscant, where the Imperial Palace and Dex's Diner are. Very important to note. And again, these great drawings that are not still images, which I love. You don't really see that in any source books anymore for Star Wars, as original drawings. And it goes through more characters, more areas. Now you got the colonies, which expands out from the core. This talks about population density. Look how beautiful that is. Next section, the inner rim. I think Naboo is inner rim. No, I lied. Naboo is mid rim. So Naboo is still pretty far from the core. This is the expansion region, which obviously is when they expanded. There was a period of galactic history called the expansion where, everything kind of started at the core and slowly but surely spread out. That's why this one's called the colonies, because they colonized other worlds and they kept going. And then there was a big boom in expansion at a certain point in history, and that big boom led to the expansion region, which you can see is pretty thick, and more stuff happened. And this is great. They tell you, like, we have the 7 wonders of the world, they have the wonders of the galaxy, and there's all these mysterious cool things that they tell you about. Then he gets to mid-rim. This is where Naboo is. As the expansion kept going, they found more and more planets. They continued on. Hut space is its own sort of separate section. It's not really one of the regions, but it's just kind of there off to the side. This is Hut space. Nal Hutta is kind of at the center of it all, and they control this space. And it gives you a little rundown of all the worlds in Hut space and a little bit of their history. Then you've got the Outer Rim territories, which, as we all know, has more planets than any other area. The Outer Rim territories is stacked. And then finally, you have Wild Space and the Unknown Regions, which I don't even think they get their own map because there's so few of them, and like the unknown regions is just the other areas of the map, and then wild space is off the map entirely. And now we get to part 2 where they highlight planets of the galaxy. See, there's a little bit of the unknown regions here. The way it works, and you'll see this in the modern canon maps too, is that on the left-hand side of the galaxy, because the galaxy is a spiral, on the left-hand side, it's kind of hard to get there. That's where all the out-of-the-way planets are. Like Jakku is around here, the western reaches. Octo, the Chiss planet is like somewhere over here. Very out of the way, very hard to get to. It's really hard to travel in that direction. That's why almost everything is in this area here. So part 2, Planets of the Galaxy, this is where they kind of do what the old book did and say, okay, here are some planets. And they give you a lot more information. There's so much more to it than you initially think. Yeah, it tells you some science stuff like how long is a year on Alderaan? 364 days. So what's the population? 2 billion. That's, well, now the population's 0, but hey. And then it goes through the language, etc. But then it also tells you in the system that Alderaan is in, like how we have the Milky Way, Alderaan has its own system there. What are the other planets in the system? So in the Alderaan's system, there's also this planet and these ones. And it tells you, well, this one is a searing rock, so there's probably no life on it. This one is terrestrial. This is barren. This is frigid. And they each also have a certain number of moons. Alderaan had 1 moon, and this one had 1 moon. And then it gives you the facts. So there's so much more packed into it. It lists even more planets that don't really make the cut, but there you go. It tells you all about the planets and moons. It really is an exhaustive look at what was back then the whole galaxy. So you'll notice a lot more prequel planets, obviously, in this that were not in the other one, but these beautiful, huge, full-color illustrations. And you would think it would be hard to get a lot of differentiation because a planet is a planet, right? A lot of them just kind of look like that or look like that. But they really try to do their best to make everything look a little bit unique, given the history and what they say. So if a planet is supposed to be really mountainous, they will draw that. Like, look at Brental. That is a cool looking planet. You don't see stuff like that too often. They try to make every one of them have its own sort of character. There's Christophsis, where the Clone Wars movie took place. There's Coruscant, as we've seen it in the movies, and it's got all those cityscapes and those huge lights. Dantooine has purple, those large purple fields. That became a staple of Dantooine. Dathomir, I don't think Dathomir looks like this anymore. It's very red now. There's the forest moon of Endor. There's Eriadu. That's where Tarkin grew up. Not a nice place to be. Felucia, very cool. Fondor, look how purple that is. I want to go there just because it's purple. The Comorian planet. Geonosis with the nice ring. The beauty of the simplicity of just how they can make all these planets look alien and still somehow hospitable. Now see, the moons of Iago, you'll notice it's the planet from Mystery of 1,000 Moons. So yeah, that's how many moons it has, 1,000 moons. Whereas something like Hoth has only 3 moons. But look, there's a lot of moons in the Hoth system. And this is something that I think really should be brought into practice now in canon. New canon really needs, in my opinion, a new big atlas like this. But this is something they should really try to stress because the characters are always saying, you know, I didn't go to the Hoth planet. They usually say, I went to the Hoth system. That's the terminology they like to use. I went to the so-and-so system, which doesn't mean a planet. It means a solar system. That's what this is. So when somebody says, I went to the Ilum system, that's all the planets and moons that are in that Ilum system. So I think a new guide, a new atlas should take that into account and be this exhaustive with its information. But that's just me. That's what I want to see. Kali, that's probably where the Thuggee cult from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom live. This is interesting. Kessel back in the day was just like a big asteroid looking thing. Now it's like a full-on planet. Kashyyyk has snow caps. I bet you didn't know that. This is like the Detroit of planets. They're always building vehicles here. So the planet has a ring, but it's not natural. It's a ring of factories that makes ships. Isn't that cool? Why haven't we seen that yet? Very fast, very dangerous. Jon Favreau hates this planet. There's Mimban from Solo, and as you can see, Mon Calamari is almost all water. Very, very cool. Mustafar, terrifying. Maigito, purple, sign me up. Now, Naboo looks great. Nagi is our first planet we've come across here that is not canon at all anymore. You won't find Nagi mentioned anywhere. It's a very odd-looking planet. It looks like bread that grew mold on it. Nalhata and Nar Shaddaa, those two pretty much always go hand in hand. This is where Nemoidians are from. This is where Padme's starship is from. I think this is the only page where the two planets kind of look pretty similar. The bounty hunter on Ord Mantell, there it is again. And there's Ossus, and there's Rakata Prime, which was where the ancient aliens from Knights of the Old Republic were. And this is canon now. I don't think we've ever visited there, but The planet and the people are canon. Raxus doesn't look like it's a fun place to be. One of the original Battlefront games, not the new ones, one of the 2 old ones, had Renvar, and it was a snowy planet with a big castle just in the snowy mountains. It was one of the coolest planets there. And that's the only place I remember Renvar from. Rishi is sort of the planet you have to go to then leave the galaxy and get to Kamino. Ryloth is red, which I didn't know. Very cool. Seleucami, that's where Stas Ali died. Cernpadal, that's where, I don't know, a bunch of Cernpadal people died. Shada di Boren is canon, apparently. But I guess they haven't brought it up much because it's Shada di Boring. Tanab and Tatooine, obviously. Tanab's very pretty. Teth from the Clone Wars movie. Typhera from Random Things. Toydaria, where Watto's from. And Triton is the next planet on this list that is not canon anymore. It just looks kind of like our moon. Sorry, Triton. Then you've got, last but not least, Yavin. Now this is Yavin the planet. And as you can see here, it says it's a gas giant, and it says it has 26 moons. So in Legends, it went up to Yavin 26, and all we ever saw was number 4. And apparently number 8 has mermaids. Where's my number 8? And now, last but not least, is Zanama Seacot, which is the 3rd and final planet in this atlas that is not canon anymore at all. Which is interesting because this played a huge, massive role in the Yuzhan Vong books. Zanama Seacot is a living planet. It's alive, and it is basically the planet that saved the galaxy from the Yuzhan Vong. And then you have the Atlas of Galactic History. What this part does is it goes through history, moment by moment, beat by beat, and whatever big moments, it shows you where in the galaxy they took place. So a long ass time ago, there was the Rakata Empire, and then there was this, and you can see here the Rakata Empire was circa 30,000 to 25,200 before the Battle of Yavin. And this means, because we're venturing into this old territory, you have another great little sample of original artwork, which I love so much. Then you got the Galactic Exploration, and it shows you how they started the trade routes. Look at all these drawings. This page is full of amazing drawings. Ancient Mysteries of the Galaxy gives you some like unsolved mysteries, like the galactic equivalent of the Bermuda Triangle. The Great Hyperspace War, it shows you where and when and how that took place. The Sith War, there's Revan and Malak and all the KOTOR stuff. This is sort of their campaign across the galaxy. The Second Sith War from KOTOR 2. The Mandalorians. There's Darth Bane. Now this is really cool. There's a trade route called the Hydian Way. Because this book is so cool and original, instead of just being bland and saying, this is the Hydian Way, they created what was then in canon sort of thing to describe the Hydian Way, and they said that this is a very popular trade route, and there's even an opera about the foundation of the trade route, and it walks you through this whole opera like as if you're reading the program, and it says Act 1, Act 2, and like what all the characters are doing and what songs they're singing, and there's an actor portraying a Duros character, and he's singing opera, and it just goes through the whole opera, and that's more of the, that's so cool. This is one of the things that makes this one of my favorite Star Wars reference books, period, is just the level of detail is so deep that it's mind-boggling. I've never seen anything like this in new canon, with the exception of complete locations. That's it. That's the closest new canon has gotten to a level of detail like this. So Phantom Menace, it tracks where everybody was, where they were going. Outbound Flight, that was a Timothy Zahn book. And it does this for every one of the movies. So there's the Clone Wars, then there's Attack of the Clones. Again, where everybody was. Obi-Wan was here, and then he went here, and then he went there. These are all the Clone Wars campaigns. There is a lot of them, and the show wasn't even close to being done. It was only like 2 seasons in at this point. Revenge of the Sith, same kind of deal, and they walk you through it beat by beat. The exploits of Lando Calrissian, so there's a lot there. That looks like a Chris Trevis picture. He really nailed what a young Lando would look like. Then they did the same thing with Han Solo, and there's so much. You could get lost in this. You could really get lost in this. And then the building of the Death Star, and then you get to A New Hope, and they do the same thing. And they chart it so well. So they say here, okay, step 1, and this line is red. See how these lines are all different colors? There's an aqua one, there's a blue one. So step 1 is red. So you find the red line, and that's where step 1 is. So it would be, there's Vader chasing Leia from there to here, and then step 2 is orange, and then that's this line and what's going on there. It's so detailed, man. And then there's all this other stuff, all these other great little shadow ports of the galaxy, where you can find shadow ports, the area of the rebellion, all these rebellion outposts. I have never seen such a detailed book in my life. Guys, I can't stress enough how beautiful this is. And then we got Empire, and then we got more stuff, and then we got Jedi. And then we got more stuff. An Empire fragmented. Now, this is when the Empire is defeated. Like, where do they go? Where do they hide out? The Cyruk and Nagai are invading now. What's their deal? The campaigns of Rogue Squadron and where the New Republic advances into Imperial Remnant territory. Digging into those Legends books now. The Hunt for Warlord Zinj. There's Warlord Sinj. He's got a cool mustache. Thrawn's campaigns. What was Thrawn doing? Then there's a clone Palpatine in his young body. Very disturbing to see young Palpatine. I can't handle it. My body and soul cannot handle it. I just noticed this like earlier today. This character here, this Birdman, he looks like a Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. He has just shown up in canon in Alphabet Squadron Shadowfall. They brought him into Shadowfall. That's just so cool. I love those books. Shadowfall, the Alphabet Squadron books are really, really good. And then again, we get deeper into Legends. There's the Yuuzhan Vong. There's Jason Solo. There's Jaina Solo. There's Anakin Solo. There's old Luke. And again, they take the same map and just show you how much things change throughout the galaxy into the unknown regions. This is Elsa's favorite page. And then at this point, we learn more about Lumia, the Dark Lady, because that was big at the time. There's Mara Jade. And then finally, the New Empire, which is 137 years after the Battle of Yavin. And this was the Legacy comic with Cade Skywalker and Darth Krayt and Emperor Fel. And that comic was brand new. And so it just got one page in this book. And that was it. Then you got a huge appendix. And that is the enormous and absolutely stunning Essential Atlas. That Galactic Atlas is so nice. I'm telling you, when I die, I want to be buried with that thing. But that was High Ground today on Summer of Legends. That was planets and moons of days yore in the Star Wars galaxy. But here's the thing. I have 3 more of those essential guides to show you before we move on to other aspects of Legends. And next time, that's what we're going to dive into. I'm going to show you those 3 final books that, quite frankly, are some of the most beautiful Star Wars source books that have ever been printed to date. That's coming up next time here on the Summer of Legends on the Rebel Scum Podcast Network. You know my face. You know my shirt. I'm Andrew Fantasia. Thanks so much for watching, Scumbags. Until then, may the force of others be with you.
Hey, Scumbags. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.